it the thing that we're working on now, particularly we're in the last phase, and the last phase is really to make sure that you've solidified your depth chart, make sure that you have solidified uh, the person coming in should injuries or COVID happen. That's been an emphasis of this whole camp is making sure our depth chart and our personnel is structured and taught in such a way that you can play multiple positions. We can stay within our package of offense, defense, or special teams, whether something happens via injury or via COVID, because there's going to be a lot of adjusting going on as this season progresses. So there are no open dates as you go through this season. So by the hand that we've been dealt in this, we've tried to put plans together, personnel together, and depth charts together so that we can adapt and adjust via injury or COVID within an instant that it happens, and the players should not be affected too much because of how it's been taught and how it can be retained. So a lot of things a lot of answers to that question you just said, but it's all about teaching and packaging things so they understand them and that we can be multiple and that we can perform them at a high level. So that's what we've been focusing on as we clean things up these last 7 to 10 days.
Any chance we can see that depth chart?
When I get it done, you can have it. So, you know, and the other part of this, though, seriously, guys, is I think we have right around 85 guys on the roster right now. Usually, when we have these things, we got 104. So when you look at depth charts, I mean, it's in FCS football, and I think for anybody in the spring, what you have to account for is the graduating seniors that have left. You don't have your incoming freshmen here yet, and you have attrition just because of progressing through the year. So now we're sitting looking at a roster of 85 instead of a roster of 104, and that makes a big difference with how you practice, how long you can practice, and how you can get a good look at practice. So, you know, we kind of joke about the depth chart, but the depth chart is really difficult because of the numbers that we're dealing with. And it'd be easy to put a 1 and a 2 down. I think it's pretty obvious who that would be, but there's so many alternating parts in there. It's the next man in is the sixth offensive lineman. He might play multiple positions, or the fifth DB, or the fifth defensive lineman. You just don't know how it's going to work out. And then plus we've had injuries in camp with hamstrings or somebody getting sick or growings, things like that, just things that take you out for 3 to 5 days. And then when that happens, all this puzzle gets mixed up again because you don't have enough depth, possibly even to stay in a package. Should you start losing guys to sickness and then try to put a 2 deep together, because we don't have 3 deep. We've got 2 deep only, minimal amount of 3 deep guys. So it won't take long to do a 2 deep because there's only 80 some guys on the team at this point because of, again, the senior bowl, the guys that have graduated and went other places or went on with their careers, and then having these guys back. But we've got 22 freshmen or whatever we signed that will come in the fall that aren't here helping us through this process of getting prepared. And that's probably been the biggest challenge playing in the spring.
Coach, we talked about Nick Ellis and Logan Wolf not being able. Is anybody else not going to be able to play next Friday?
Yeah, right now, Isaiah Green, Thomas Wilson, of course Ellis, Wolf are out as of right now. Mason Neeson is questionable right now. And I think those are the primary ones right now, besides the guys, of course, that have graduated. Because keep going back to them because, I keep thinking about the fall depth chart where, those guys are on it. Now they're not on it. So when you lose an Ellis and a Mason Neeson on top of losing Jackson Scott Brown and Spencer, you can kind of see where it kind of falls apart on you very quickly as far as trying to get that depth chart together so it works and works well.
Mark, who's your backup quarterback?
Right now, we've equally played When we talk about the quarterbacks, you've got, of course, Will be our starter. Nate Martins and Justin Farley have taken equal reps since the day way back in March. Everything that we've done with Justin and Nate have been equal, so we've tried to bring both of them along at the same rate right now. If I don't know if I would say one or the other today. If you made me say a name right now, I think Nate would probably be the next one in, but I also think circumstance might put Justin Farley in there. But I think that's more of a day-to-day, just kind of a body of work type thing, and we're trying to chart and make basically statistical decisions on those two as much as arbitrary decisions when we watch them play, because both have a talent, both have a strength, and which strength would play best against the opponent we're up against would probably dictate who that next man is. In a depth chart, you'd probably see Will first, those two side by side. If you made me stack them, I'd probably put Nate Martins and Justin Farley 2-3 if I did it that way, and then Cale Loescher is of course the fourth one.
Do you think that the blueprint to being a championship team in the spring is different than the fall? And if so, in which ways?
Well, I think it's a huge difference right now, and I think the blueprint in the spring is making, man, it's difficult, okay? Because there's so many things I think about to that question. One, let's talk about the weather. When you play outdoors, what will you be allowed to do in this time of year? When you play indoors, not a factor. When you play outdoors, is going to be a huge factor. And I've even thought forward into how will we present ourselves at Youngstown State, who probably has more snow than we have right now. So how would we perform today outside if we just took the snow off our field, because that's what we're going to play in? We've been there before. We understand what that feels like when we played Delaware and Montana's. But again, you can prepare for it now because it's your second game of the season and not the 14th game of the season. So how are you going to handle those types of things? When you look at many of the things I've already covered is the depth chart. We're so lean at some positions. So if we lose what you would call probably a headline player that we all look to, Isaiah Weston, then what takes place, because you don't have all those other players in the depth chart. So again, where will you move towards to still present an offense or a defense that can win that day? Because we do play in a very strong league, and everybody's going that direction. And then my final answer to that question would be, what I really notice about watching the teams in the fall, we're the second ones that get to do this. We don't have to gauge this as the first time. This has already been done. So if we can learn from what other people have already done and how they performed, then we have a better chance of being successful early. So I've tried to watch the teams that were successful and the teams that struggled early, and it really wasn't because of talent. I thought there were some big-name teams that struggled this last year, and I just tried to find out why did they struggle, where maybe not as talented teams did very well, but were just better prepared to handle the adversity of alternating players at the last second. So I really believe being able to alternate those players at the last second is just as important as the first play of the game, because that player is going to have to win games for us. No open dates. You're playing in a different weather climate, which may affect injuries too, because I noticed that there's a lot more injuries this year for the teams that played, particularly early in the season. So we've tried to practice to get their bodies used to performing on the grass and taking the hits, and hopefully by the extra time that we had, our division might not see as many injuries. But I thought there was a lot of early season injuries this year that weren't there in years past, as I watched the BCS go through this whole situation.
A little more specifically, Mark, when it comes to the pass rush, we know Bronte, Tim Butcher, Jared Brinkman, they're there. Everybody knows Ellerson's gone now. So with that said, who are the guys that have put themselves in position to take those snaps that are available and give you what you need out of your pass rush?
Well, we'll have to. That will go probably there are players there right now. You got Devin Rice. You got Devin's on one side. Caden Hofftelling's on the other side. You've got Brinkman and Butcher inside. They're still bad. You've got our defensive line. Christian Boyd's the other one that's playing very well right now. Our defensive line is just how you put them out there. We don't have the 6'6", 245-pound rush defensive end, all right? But that doesn't mean we won't get the same amount of sacks because we've gotten Carter Scholl got just as many sacks as Ellerson Smith did. He just got them in a different way. So we have to be wise enough to put them in the position they can play to their strengths so they can still get those sacks, get those pressures, but it's not going to be the same as Ellerson got them. I mean, Ellerson was a special player, but Devin is as well. Caden is as well. So there's ways to play to their strength too. So that'll kind of unfold as we go through the season. But I don't necessarily feel bad about our pass rush right now. I think we'll find ways to create problems. And then again, you go back to our secondary. A pass rush has a lot to do with your coverage. And if our coverage is such that we can get some coverage sacks, that's just as getting, good as blitzing somebody. So we'll play it out. And again, I feel confident in that defensive line that we already spoke about, of those guys being able to step up and make some plays.
Thanks, Mark.
Coach, could you break down the offensive line too? There are, like you mentioned, there's going to be 4 guys that potentially that you've lost that aren't going to be there next Friday.
Yeah, in the offensive line, you go across, it was Trevor Penning, Piney, Sorensen. Those are all key players for us right now. As far as those guys are back, they're experienced, they know what they're doing. They can really help and lead other guys out there. Jared Penning has came a long way as a freshman. He was developed last year, and he's done very well. Frazier has done very well for us, the transfer out of Kansas. So those are the players that come quickly to mind as I go across the front. And then I'd say Vanderslice is another one that's got a lot of experience in our programs, been through a lot of injuries, but is out there with us daily. And he hasn't had the injury bug hit him now. So he's been developed. He knows what he's doing. So he's in that structure of offensive linemen that can come and go on the offensive line. And then where that gap is it takes about 3 years to develop an offensive lineman, and by losing, Ellis to injury and Spencer to an early season out, that next guy just maybe isn't quite mentally ready to play or physically, because we got some young offensive linemen getting developed. It's just we needed that weight room time with them. So they'll play, and then we'll play to their strengths, but, they're probably a year away from being what we actually recruited them for as far as becoming a starter for us.
You mentioned, Mark, that if somebody like an Isaiah Weston goes down, that's a situation where you really have to look at how you get the best players on the field. So who's stuck out behind Isaiah at that wide receiver position? Who had a good camp?
I'll tell you what, the receivers I think have had a very good camp. Very pleased with that whole development, because as I watch Deion McShane, Quan Hampton, Sam Schnee, those guys are doing some really nice things out there, okay, as far as working together and running routes. It's been pleasing to see the offense come along as a unit, as a receiver corps, because they were kind of a question mark of who was going to take those roles on, and they really have done an exceptional job. It might be the most the most improved group from January when we came here to where they're at today. They still got to perform in the field, but as far as at practice, I'd probably say they're the most improved group from start to finish. And a lot had to do with the inexperience, that now the more they get experience, the faster they play. And they're all very good players. It was just they needed an opportunity to present themselves on the field like they have been here the last month. So yeah, no, that group has been I've been very pleased with that group and how they've came along, and they needed to.
Do you expect that you're going to have more contributions from freshmen, the 2020 class, because one of all the guys you talked about, kind of the extra department reason having a shorter roster, but also because there's an extra half a year in here between when they would have played and when they're playing now. So they're sort of, their second semester of freshmen.
No question. There's going to be a lot of freshmen on that field. And that all relates back to what I keep saying from the beginning. What can we play and be successful in? Because we got to play to their strength. They cannot it's not feasible to ask them to play our whole defensive package, our whole offensive package. We do a lot of things. We rely on our players to be smart players, be intelligent, and be able to do a lot of things because that's the type of players we recruit. They can do all those things, but it also takes time to retain all those things. That's why your juniors and your seniors are so valuable because, you can do anything and you can make any adjustment at halftime because of the retention and the recall. You can't do that with a freshman. You have to go with what they know so they can play at a high level too, and that kind of limits you sometimes what you can actually call. So no question, there'll be a lot of freshmen that play, redshirt freshmen that play. Redshirt sophomores I still would call as young guys in the program. So those people were willing to make the difference in your program whether you win or lose. That's what I saw happen in the BCS, and that's what I'm guessing is going to happen in the FCS now, is who line of players in that grade, in that age group, are going to stand out and become, the player to look to as the season progresses.
Have your expectations, this is such a strange thing. We're here, it's February 10th, and we're talking about you playing your first football game next week, and this 8-game season where all of this is just so insanely different. Has it changed your expectations for what you're hoping for out of the spring season? Is this spring season more to get your ducks in a row for the fall, or is it the expectations the same here? We want to go out, we want to try and win the conference, we want to try and win a championship. How do you balance all of this with how crazy and unusual this is?
No, our standards haven't changed. That's been the message since the day we walked in the door. Our expectations haven't changed. Our standards haven't changed. The way we practice, what we're responsible for, and who we're responsible to, those things haven't changed. That's UNI football. When you're in this program, there's only one way to do things, and that's the standard we live by, whether we're playing in January or playing in October. So there's no question. I can't even feasibly think of waiting for next season or waiting for next fall. We'll line up if they can walk and strap some shoulder pads on, we'll play. All right, and I think that's their attitude as well, because that's why they came here. It's not if we line up with 11 freshmen, we'll line up with 11 freshmen, and we'll expect to win, and we'll do the best we can to give them the best plan to win. But that's how they've been practicing. That's how the coaches have been coaching them, and it's actually been a lot of fun, to be honest with you, to have everybody involved in practice instead of having scout teams. We don't have any scout teams. We've got one offense and two offense. We got one offense and two defense and a couple alternates. Everybody's invested, everybody's involved, and I think it's made our team better.
Coach, does this, with this craziness, does it make it all worth it? Playing in next week, and then like we said, after this 8-game season, it's going to be just a couple months before you're back at it again. Is it all worth it?
My answer to that is I just want to deal with one day at a time right now and 1 week at a time, one opponent at a time, because if we start looking at the what ifs, that's how you get beat. Heck, that's what we say in our coach's office. If we're dealing with what ifs in a play call, or if a player's thinking a what if situation, then we're going to get beat. We got to take all the what if out of it and just get lined up. And the only way we can do that right now is prepare for today to make sure we get the most out of the day, and prepare for this first opponent, and whatever happens, happens. I've already heard that Western Illinois and South Dakota have dropped that game already. So we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. I don't even look past, the end of this week, because we've actually put everything in phases instead of in as a season. And the phase that we're in right now is in the final phase, and that's game prep, and we're just going into game prep right now mode for South Dakota State. And if we get that far, we'll make the adjustment at that time to move on to the next game. But in all seriousness, not even a cliche. It is deal with the time at hand, what we can control, and like I said, the fun part about it is we're getting the whole team ready to play and not just the first and the second team right now, which totally changes the demeanor of practice too, by the way. So we've had to change how we do things at practice. Otherwise, there's no way they're going to be able to sustain 12 months of football. But right now, I think we're on course to be able to sustain 12 months of football if we can get through the next 10 days and get this first game under our belt.
Is your
Coach,
voice,
I noticed. Oops,
is your,
go ahead, Cole.
is your voice going to sustain 12 months of football, Coach Farley?
It better. Got a lot. It's actually we're so fortunate to play in a dome. I mean, I think about the teams that don't have a dome right now, and we haven't had the dome for half of our practices. We've been over at the Sportsplex, and it's really worked out well. Nobody complains. Nobody says anything about it. You got to adapt and adjust because there's multiple sports going on around here. So again, it's one of those things that we got to adapt, and hopefully the voice will get trained to handle this. All right, but I'm actually looking forward to it, okay? Because it's been a huge challenge now, huge challenge, but it's been a challenge that just trying to win the challenge is the challenge in itself, and the way our team is right now, I feel very comfortable going into this last week of practice. You know, I didn't say the first game yet. I just said the last week of practice. We're in a good place. We need to continue to improve.
Coach, I noticed Terrence Kamara is on the roster already. Is he in camp already? And will he be able to contribute this year?
He cannot contribute. TK is the one you mentioned. He's the freshman, and he's the only freshman, came out of high school, graduated early, and then came in January. He's the only one that did that. So, but he cannot play. If you played at all, freshmen cannot play. True freshmen, high school players can't play. Whereas a transfer could play if they did not play in the fall is the rule. So the newer guys that transferred in, since they didn't play for their respective teams last fall, can play this spring for us. But a true freshman out of high school cannot. So he's basically, I take that back, he is the only scout team player out there. We got one scout team player, and it's TK.
Can you shake out your defensive backfield for us? You know, you graduated a couple pieces. Who's going to fill in? You know, I know you brought in a couple transfers. How's that group look?
I feel good about our secondary. I think it starts Austin Evans and Omar are doing very well. Isaiah Nimmers is really done an exceptional job. You know, you go to you got Spencer Perry, who's back from last year, and then we added Sapp to the secondary as well as the Governor, and Stephon Black and even Lasik have all improved in the secondary of guys from last year. So their progress has been very good, and there's a lot of experience that came back off that group. We lost a couple great players too, but at the same time, I think we picked up some good players, and the growth of Evans and Omar, it's nice to have those two back with the experience and talent that they have. So that's kind of one of the comfort zones we have, that we're allowed to do some things because they've been through our system, they know our calls, they know our terminology, and we can make a lot of adjustments back there when we need to.
And I guess when you talk about that, he didn't get talked about, but Roosevelt Lawrence was such a key part as a shutdown corner for that. Who's going to be that guy for you this year? Or is it a combination?
It'll be a combination, but I tell you what, you mentioned Roosevelt. As I watched all the tape from last year, Roosevelt had a great season. Roosevelt, in his first year here, was okay. Roosevelt, as a senior, was a great player. I mean, he shut down a lot of great players that maybe we didn't give him credit for last year just because we assumed he was doing those things. But when you go back and watch the tape, he had an exceptional year. So we need to fill those shoes along with Xavier's as well. Xavier had a good year as well. So we've lost two great players in the secondary, and the secondary is always hard to replace. But I do think the guys that we have right now can fill those roles and play at a very high level. So I expect the same standard in the secondary, that it better be better than last year. And how we do that, we might have to do things a little bit differently, but it can get done, and that's what we're going to do. We got to get it done in the back end, and we got to do it better than we did it last year.
Mark, after Briley went down in that first game in 2019, the tight end position was kind of a moving piece throughout the season. I'm sure everybody wanted more production out of the transfer, you've got redshirt freshmen, Jaden's back. I mean, what's the landscape there? What's it look like at tight end? How's that position look?
Tight end. That one's the thing about tight end is you're in the run game, you're in the pass game, you're in the protection scheme. I mean, probably has to be as knowledgeable as the quarterback is of what's going on because he's involved in every phase of the game. So that particular group, I say, that one's, since there is youth and inexperience and only 1 year under the belt when you really look at it, that's one of those positions that what's their strength and what level can they play to with 6 months of training, and even 2 weeks of practice or a month of practice that we've been in. So yeah, that's a question mark. You're going down the right path because there's youth there, there's inexperience there, and yet they have to know as much as the quarterback positions. Receivers are receivers, running backs are running backs. Tight ends are offensive linemen, protection scheme, in routes, in coverages, in formations. There's a lot on their plate, and that's why it takes a little bit longer to bring along a tight end, just as it takes a little bit longer to bring out a linebacker because you're involved in so many aspects of the game. That meeting time is much different than going to a coverage meeting or a route meeting or a run game meeting. You're involved in all the meetings, which means you have a lot more to learn, and the experience of play will factor into how you play. So yeah, that'll unfold in front of us as we start playing this season.
Coaches, you guys have lined up across each other, ones against ones against twos. Which side has held the advantage here so far through the first 2 or 3 weeks?
I don't know that either of them have. I mean, they both have done a good job against each other. The challenge was to go hard and keep them healthy because you lose one guy, it changes the dynamics of the practice, let alone the game. So let them go that hard because they want to hit each other, they want to play, and they want to win. Defense wants to beat the offense wants to beat the defense. I want to put our football team on the field to beat somebody else. So that's the challenge right now is let them play, let them be aggressive, but at the same time, get them in position to play because it doesn't matter what we do against each other. It'll only matter what we do against the opponent. So I don't know that one has outdueled the other one. I just know on a daily basis they're going against each other, and it's been a month now, and they're still, as of today, still going against each other. That's what's different. Before we'd be against scout teams. We're still going ones against ones at times during practice.
I know you talked about going day by day here, but do you have a plan on how to get outside before you go to Youngstown in 2 weeks?
Truthfully, I started that process 2 days ago, and here's the craziness of it. I don't have an answer right now for you, but one of the things that I've tried to plan for is where will we practice? I know they have much snow as we do, so I was looking at an end loader going out in our practice field out here and clearing the snow because I know I can't get on a field turf surface because they're not. You can't clear that snow off. So I'm looking at our outdoor fields. Should I put an end loader out there to clear the snow off, and will the frozen ground not buckle or anything when I put that much weight on that to clear the snow? Otherwise, we're going to go out in ankle deep of snow, and we'll be a good run team. I don't know if we'll be able to throw the ball in that much snow, but we got to get outside. We got to get outside. I will not go to Youngstown unless we practice outside. Guarantee you that. Players are sitting in the background mumbling already. So when you talk to them, you can ask them, but we will practice outside because that is a condition that we have to play in. And when you look at the final score, it won't matter. They won't tell the temperature. They'll just have the final score. So we will practice outside and get me wired up. We'll go out this afternoon, but we got to deal with some other things first. Anybody else? Go ahead.
I was gonna say maybe you can recruit, a bunch of fans to bring some shovels, and just start shoveling away there.
Well, that's the other fun part of this whole thing, and is this is all unique. Having a media day in February, I mean, I think the media day is out of this by now. It's more like let's get ready for the game. But what I'm telling you is, what the fun part of it is we are the only division playing. We are the only football that you'll see on TV. So if you want to watch football, this is it. And we're fortunate enough to have a dome, so when we get home games, I hope that we continually can get fans, because that Saturday afternoon of cabin fever or staying at home would be a great opportunity to come in here for a football game. So I think there's a huge positive to those things. As much as we got to overcome the challenges, there's a lot of huge positives to this whole process.